All right, welcome back to another episode of the Black Bullion Show. Today, we are going to be talking about why gold was chosen as the premier money throughout history. And before we get into that, we're actually going to talk about why we even need money or currency to begin with. And I have a simple example here that I think anybody can understand. I broke it down so it's really easy to go over. But before we begin, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you like the video, it helps to get this economic evangelism out there. So let's get right into it. This is Econ 101. So we have a town called Stagnant Town. And in order to live in this town, you need to eat apples every day. If you don't eat apples every day, you die. That is the rules of Stagnant Town. So in Stagnant Town, you have three demographics. You have demographic 0. Demographic 0 makes up 25% of the town. And they have all of the apples. They have an apple orchard. And they are willing to give up some of their apples, but they only accept beef for the apples. Okay. Demographic 1 is another 25% of the town. Demographic 1 has beef and exchanges their beef for apples and only accepts apples for beef. So that is their commodity exchange. Now, we have another demographic here called demographic 2. And demographic 2 makes up 50% of the town and does not have an apple orchard and does not have beef. They have none of the two commodities that are used to exchange for one another. These two commodities, beef and apples, to the people in Stagnant Town represent the same value. Now, unless you own these two commodities, you cannot participate in the economy, essentially. Now, the reason why I called it Stagnant Town is because 50% of the town is not participating in the economy. In fact, they're starving. 50% are participating in the economy, and they're doing just okay. So 50% of the town will starve, 50% of the town will thrive. The economy of Stagnant Town only exists among 50% of the town. How can we ensure that 50% of the town does not starve while making sure that 100% of the town is engaged in the economy? We need an item that represents value that demographic 0, 1, 2 can use to exchange with one another. We need a medium of exchange. So, what can that be? Well, we are going to create Productive Town, formerly known as Stagnant Town. And in Productive Town, again, in order to live in this town, you need to eat apples every day. But instead of just having apples and beef being the two commodities of exchange, we are going to use gold as a medium of exchange. And it's going to represent the value of the beef and the apples. So back to demographic 0, which is 25% of the town. They still have an apple orchard, but they accept this medium of exchange called gold, which represents the value of beef. And not only that, because they are able to have a representation of value for apples and beef called gold, which they accept, they can now give that value to other people as their business booms. And I'll show you why their business booms soon. So they use that extra to hire and pay people from demographic 2. And they hire and pay them with gold. Now we have demographic 1. Demographic 1 has beef, exchanges beef for apples, and accepts gold. I should also put in there that they also exchange gold for apples as well. Um, they hire and pay people from demographic 2 with gold. Okay, so let's look at demographic 2. Demographic 2, they were the formerly starved. They work for either demographic 0 or demographic 1. They get paid in gold. And um, they pay demographic 0 80% of their gold to get apples. They also pay demographic 2 20% of their gold to get beef, just because they like the taste and just because they have a little bit of extra. Now, both demographic 0 and demographic 1 have increased streams of revenue. Demographic 2 is no longer starving and is helping to grow the economy by paying for both apples and beef. And because of that growth, demographic 0 and demographic 1 can continue to hire more people from demographic 2. Now, why was gold chosen as the medium of exchange? So that is what we'll be answering soon. But the key lesson here in having a medium of exchange is that it increases the productivity of an economy. And when you increase the productivity of an economy and you don't have these choke points, such as, well, I only have this one large commodity of beef here. I only have this one large commodity of all these apples here. That's what I need. Give me those apples. Or that's what I need. Give me that beef. And if there's nothing in between that, that means those who don't have beef or those who don't have apples can't participate in the economy. That means the economy can't grow and it will be stagnant. So having a medium of exchange will help to increase the productivity of an economy. Now we need to understand why gold was chosen as the medium of exchange. So let's get into it. This is why why we use gold as currency. And this comes from the World Economic Forum. And they do a really nice breakdown of it. But it pretty much just comes down to the periodic table. And it's a process of elimination of all of the elements that we have in the world. Now, again, our world is made up of all of these elements in the periodic table. So some elements are good essentially elements are going to either be abundant or they're going to be scarce. Some are going to be explosive, some are not. Some are going to have a high melting point, some are not. So there is a series of a process of elimination that basically whittled everything down to gold and also silver, but primarily gold. And we're going to go into why. So here we go. The periodic table organizes 118 elements in rows in increasing atomic number, periods, and columns, groups, with similar electron configurations. Just as in today's animation, which is what was there above, I'll link this in the description too for this video. Let's apply the process of elimination to the periodic table to see why gold is money. Let's start with gases and liquids. Noble gases such as argon and helium, as well as elements such as hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, and chlorine are gaseous at room temperature and standard pressure. Meanwhile, mercury and bromine are liquids. As a form of money, these are implausible and impractical. Okay, let's go to lanthanides and actinides. Next, lanthanides and actinides are both generally elements that can decay and become radioactive. If you were to carry these around in your pocket, you could irradiate or poison you, or they could irradiate or poison you. Okay, next let's go to alkali and alkaline earth metals. Alkali and alkaline earth metals are located on the left side of the periodic table and are highly reactive at standard pressure and room temperature. Some can even burst into flames. Transition, post-transition metals, and metalloids. There are about 30 elements that are solid, non-flammable, and non-toxic. For an element to be used as money, it needs to be rare, but not too rare. Nickel and copper, for example, are found throughout the Earth's crust in relative abundance. So obviously, nickel and copper could not be a good use case for money because they are just too abundant. Okay, so let's look at super rare and synthetic elements. Osmium only exists in the Earth's crust from meteorites. Meanwhile, synthetic elements such as rutherfordium and nihonium must be created in a laboratory. Okay, so once the above elements are eliminated, there are only 5 precious metals left. Only 5: platinum, palladium, rhodium, silver, and gold. People have used silver as money, but it tarnishes over time. So those of us who have stacked silver, those little milk spots on it, and then like some of those older silver coins that we've seen that have been around for hundreds of years and they've oxidated, that's what happens. It can get tarnished. Rhodium and palladium are more recent discoveries with limited historical uses. So rhodium and palladium, they're pretty nice, but they've only been discovered recently. So maybe they could have been, a medium of exchange back in the day, but they've only been discovered recently, and we have limited historical use cases for them. So that leaves platinum and gold. Platinum and gold are the remaining elements. Platinum's extremely high melting point would require a furnace of the gods to melt back in ancient times, making it impractical during those times. This leaves us with gold. It melts at a lower temperature and is malleable, making it easy to work with. So as you can see, when we needed to come up with a medium of exchange, instead of just having all of these commodities, we needed something that could just go through the ringer of process of elimination. And we decided to settle on gold, as the premier item that we use to, use as money. Now, obviously, since 1971, we've been in the fiat system. So we'll continue. We'll see how well that continues in the future. But for those of you who just checked this video out, let me know what you think. Of course, there are other reasons why gold was used as money in the past, but I think this is a nice, simple way to take a look as to why. So when someone asks you, why do we care about gold? Why was gold money to begin with anyway? Point them to this article right here. And again, I'll link this in the description so you guys can use it for future reference. All right, thanks again for watching this episode of Black Bullion. Please give the video a like if you learned something new. Please subscribe to the channel if you are new. Thanks again.